Hollywood Shootout: How One Heist Revolutionized Police Tactics Forever. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most intense and eye-opening events in American law enforcement history, the North Hollywood Shootout. This gripping incident not only made headlines back in 1997, but also changed the way police handled armed confrontations forever. But let me ask you something. What happens when heavily armed criminals face off against police in a battle for control? Intrigued? I thought you might be. Grab a snack and let's get into it. Alright, so picture this. It's the early 1990s in North Hollywood, Los Angeles. Crime was soaring, and the city was at the center of the growing gang and drug crises. In that chaos, two men, Larry Phillips Jr. and Emil Matasarianu, emerged armed to the teeth and ready for a life-changing heist. What were they thinking? Well, these guys had a plan, and they weren't going to let a little thing called law enforcement stand in their way. They set their sights on a bank, and as we'll see, they were prepared with more than just a mask and a bag for cash. The day of the heist was February 28, 1997. Phillips and Matasarianu stormed into a Bank of America branch in broad daylight. Here's where it gets crazy. They were decked out in full body armor and carrying fully automatic rifles. This wasn't your average stick them up. They had the firepower to take on an army. As things went down, the police received a frantic call about the robbery. But when they arrived at the scene, they quickly realized they were seriously outgunned. The robbers were firing wildly, and the police were on the back foot. Can you imagine being in that situation? Hey, officer, do we have anything heavier to play with? What followed was nothing short of a Hollywood action movie. For 44 minutes, a brutal gunfight unfolded on the streets of North Hollywood. There were hundreds of shots fired, and what was intended to be a simple robbery turned into a full-blown war scene. The robbers had a tactical advantage, and they even managed to hijack a vehicle to escape. Bystanders were terrified, and the situation escalated so drastically that officers had to borrow weapons from nearby gun stores to combat the criminals. So, what was the result of this mayhem? Sadly, there were casualties. 2 officers and several civilians were injured, and the robbers ultimately lost their lives in the shootout. The aftermath hit hard, especially since it portrayed a grim picture of law enforcement and the challenges they faced in high-stakes situations. Media coverage was extensive, as the incident raised alarms about public safety and police preparedness. The North Hollywood Shootout was a wake-up call for law enforcement agencies everywhere. Now let's get to the juicy part. How did this event change police tactics forever? Due to the magnitude of what went down, law enforcement recognized the need for more advanced training and resources. SWAT teams and tactical response units began to see much more use, and police departments started emphasizing preparedness for active shooter situations. From that day on, it was clear that simply showing up with standard equipment wouldn't cut it against heavily armed criminals. Police forces began to rethink their strategies, focusing on better coordination, communication, and specialized training. This shootout didn't just impact LA, it sent shockwaves through law enforcement across the globe, transforming how cops deal with high-risk situations. To wrap it all up, the North Hollywood Shootout was a pivotal moment in the history of policing. It highlighted the ever-evolving nature of crime and the necessity for law enforcement to adapt. And remember, just like they say in action movies, armed robbers never get a second chance unless they're in a sequel. If you found this video interesting and want to hear more crazy stories from the world of crime and law enforcement, be sure to leave a comment below with your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.